Excellent. We're now recording episode 8 of Arcanum Unbound. The show where we talk about, and according to El Rizzi, dissect books. I'm Jordan. This is my Twitch. Everything is RIT Malfunction, RAT Malfunction. Here with LA Kings Dave. I want to point to like where you're supposed to be on camera, but there's just a mean quote.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. You approved it. Everything's fine. This month we're talking about a little hatred, but I want to do quick little announcements beforehand. I know that I'm missing a few people here at this point, but that's okay. Tomorrow I will be recording with my friends at the Northern Critic podcast. We're going to be doing a casual review of Jojo Rabbit. Keep an eye out for that. And then May 18th, I will be doing Tea and Tales with a Renee Sky. She is the author of Her Molten Crown, I believe it is. But she's going to have me on to discuss world building and how to incorporate that into your books and whatever you're writing. I probably should have had that prepared, but that's okay. We power on. Yeah, that's about it. That one's going to be at 3:30 in the morning on May 18th, Central Standard Time. So we will see if that's actually a thing we do, or like anybody can catch live. But there'll be a recording. It'll be interesting. I have to follow up. That's it for the announcement. But like, just she posted the second episode, and this is more for just like chit chat with you and I, Dave. But she posted the second episode about critique and narration, and she had a doctor on the show, and so I don't know how I'm going to follow that up in a couple weeks, but oh boy, it's going to be interesting.
Well, you are an astronaut, so...
Am I? Why am I an astronaut?
I don't know, just make shit up.
Oh, cool. I don't want to lie, but
You're from Winnipeg, like that's where all the, the jets and Air Force for Canada is, so...
Not anymore. They moved that. They moved that into a small town called Shiloh.
That's a terrible name for a town.
Most town names in Manitoba are either fantastic or awful. I.e. Flin Flon. Amazing name. Truly iconic. Brandon. Awful. I'm trying to think of like other goofy small towns. Whatever. It doesn't matter. On to the show. We're way behind on recording episodes and shit, and the next book is very long, so we'll probably continue to be behind. But
are we that far behind though?
I want to record like earlier in the month on a regular basis. To be fair, it is April 22nd.
Right.
But that's okay. Life has been a lot lately. Everybody's aware of that. Nobody's worried. That's fine. Everything's fine. But regardless, March's Arcanum Unbound book was A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. Do you want to read the synopsis, or do you want me to read it?
Go for it.
Okay. The chimneys of industry rise over Adua, and the world seethes with new opportunities, but old scores run deep as ever. On the blood-soaked borders of England, Leo Den Brock struggles to win fame on the battlefield and defeat the marauding armies of Stour Nightfall. He hopes for help from the crown, but King Jezal's son, the feckless Prince Orso, is a man who specializes in disappointments. Savine Danglotka, socialite, investor, and daughter of the most feared man in the Union, plans to claw her way to the top of the slag heap of society by any means necessary, but the slums boil over with a rage that all the money in the world cannot control. The age of machine dawns, but the age of magic refuses to die. With the help of the mad hill woman, Isern Eiffel, Ricke struggles to control the blessing or the curse of the Long Eye. Glimpsing the future is one thing, but with the guiding hand of the first of the Magi still pulling the strings, changing it will be quite another. I pronounced Ricke wrong almost the entire book. Yeah, almost entirely. Until like at the end where she... Yeah. Well, and then she says to like the king, it's like, oh, it's Ricke. It rhymes with pricker. It's like, Jesus Christ. Oh, great character though. Absolutely fantastic character.
Yes.
Anyway, what do you think?
I liked it. I struggled to get into it at first. I restarted this like twice because I started it and then kind of lost my way in it, and then went back, and then another. Then I don't know. The first couple chapters were a little bit tough for me to get through to really get into the story, and then I really liked the last 2/3 of it, I guess. So
That's yeah, that's fair, and that's kind of how I felt too. Like it was a slow start, like a very slow start.
I think if we'd read the other books by him, maybe it wouldn't have been. I don't know.
I have read a lot of not a lot, sorry, because there's like 6 books I believe preceding this one.
I've never read any of them, so
Yeah, I've read 2.5 of the original First Law trilogy.
okay.
So, and I like them. They're a lot more gruesome. They're a lot more like what I, and this is probably some form of bias because now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like a lot more of what I assume Joe Abercrombie's going to be. But I mean, writers evolve and change and improve their craft. Like that's just what's happening here. Personal gripe with everything is that all of these characters, almost all of these characters, are descendants of main characters from the original trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah,
I kind of got that feeling.
Yeah.
So I looked up a little bit of it. I didn't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
So I didn't really want to go too far into it, but just doing a little character research, I know that at least a few. I don't know how many of these characters are actually from the original, but I got the feeling that it's pretty much just 3 main characters in this one that were not in the original. So Sabine, Rika, and Leo, right?
And Prince Orso, I believe, is not in the original, and by I believe, I mean is not, but they're like descendants of main characters.
Gotcha.
Leo is probably he's the descendant of like a secondary character.
Okay.
Stour Nightfall is the descendant of like the main bad guy of the original series, like his grandson, I believe. Because why can't I remember his name? I can't remember the main bad guy's name from the original series. Sorry, I'm also cheating because the back of the like physical book has like a big list of names. Regardless, he is the son of the main bad guy, like the leader of the North, who had the same goal as Stour did, like take back the North, take back England and the Protectorate.
So his father was a guy named Calder.
Yeah, I'm looking for his grandfather.
His grandfather, or his father, would have been Bethod.
Bethod, yeah, there we go. Personally, I liked Gunnar the most, like Broad, of all the characters, because like I won't jump too far ahead, but he was the one that was like not related to anybody. He's just some guy. But yeah, no, I can tell you where each of them came from, and that's kind of what, like prior knowledge of the series kind of spoiled the rest of the book. And like, we'll get to that. We will get to that.
Okay.
Because like, there's no way I'm not saying my piece on this. I complained to Alexis about it like extensively, and she's like, "I don't understand this. I don't know. I haven't read this book." It's like, that's fine, but like, I'm still mad about it. And I guess you already answered my second question of, are you familiar with the First Law universe? No.
Not at all.
That's fair. I am, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. Book ground. Let's get into the meat of it. The script. Did you like the way that he wrote? Like, did you like his style of writing?
Sorry, people joining us in Discord. I do, for the most part, actually. I think that he is an author with a lot of great quotes. It's I don't know if it's almost cliche at times, but he's definitely got some great quotes from different players throughout the novel, and I think that it makes especially certain like conversations and certain characters more memorable when you think of them in the context of certain things that he's written about them or has them say to other people. But I mean, I think overall, that was definitely the strength of his writing in this book was the conversational stuff. I don't necessarily know that all of the fighting was the best I've seen in fantasy series, but overall, yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I like the way I'm taking a little bit of it. Like, I'm not going to go so extreme as to have 4 main characters in my own writing, but I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed the way he's writing, and I like having basically, like a handful of like short stories to follow rather than like one long story. But they all still kind of play into each other because the universe keeps happening, and
Right.
like. He's probably my new. I don't want to get into world building. I want to stick to like my notes, but that's okay. We'll stick with the script itself and with writing, and I'll get to the world building after, because he does do a good job of the world building. He just does it progressively, and like it's just things happen, and the characters interact with what's happening. But anyway, all of his stories are like this, and he does like there was the chapter The Little People. That one like really stood out as like quintessential like Joe Abercrombie, because he uses that like third person like omniscient narrator to move through a lot of things happening in a small amount of time, because it bounces from point of view to point of view to point of view. And I don't know if omniscient was the right term, but it doesn't matter. Like, he moves around these points of view, and it's like you get a great idea of what's happening, and then it comes all the way back around, starts with Savine and ends with Savine, and it's like that was a really fun chapter to read. Like, I don't like find myself saying that a lot. Like, I like reading, but like reading like a casual sense. So it's like, okay, like a nice like settle down, read a chapter or two, and I feel good. But it's like I got excited. I was like, this is a really good chapter. But yeah, no, he does that a lot, and I highly recommend it because it gets to be like when, especially like when the characters interact, it gets to be really really good. And we'll kind of move along into our character section.
I love that chapter and the way that he went with it, but it almost felt a little out of place in this book, only because it didn't feel like a lot of the other chapters he wrote, even though it was that good. But like,
It did.
Go ahead.
Carry on. No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I think that it might have been nice to see a little more of that style throughout the book than just in the one chapter. But granted, that was going through a situation where there was a lot of people involved, so
Yeah.
it made sense in the context.
I think we probably could have gotten another chapter like that between the fight between Leo and Stour. I really because you have what were there? There was Stour was there, Calder was there, Clover was there, Leo's mother, his friends, Ricka was there, the Dogman. Like, you could have bounced through all these points of view where it's like, and Dogman looked over to his right and saw what's her name, like I can't remember Leo's mother's name, but like, oh, and this is what she was doing, and then you move into her point of view of what's going on, and that would be a really, I think, really interesting way to describe a fight scene. Like, you get like the fight is happening and it's the focus, but you have the ability to like give different value to what's happening in that exact moment, and I think that would be really really cool. But we'll see. I really like Abercrombie's work, and I could see him taking up something like that, and especially if it gets good like reviews in that this chapter, phenomenal. Like, we might see more of it, and I think I'd hope we see more of it. But yeah, we can go to the actual characters now though. Did you enjoyed having the multiple? I'm assuming from what we talked about, you enjoyed having multiple characters rather than just like one main character.
To me, normally in a book, it doesn't really matter. With a book with this many, when you have a universe like this, I think it's better to have multiple characters. And I enjoyed the characters that they profiled.
Mm-hmm.
I think Leo is probably the weakest character, but I still liked him.
I think he kind of came around on me.
He came around on me too. I thought he was really weak to start.
Yeah.
And maybe
well, now
that
you're
was
like
on purpose, but
yeah.
Like, Savine was interesting almost from the get-go.
Oh yeah, and I think that was the point.
Yeah.
I think that like the character I related to, maybe not related to, but like the one I like the most, like opposite, like like I was like, oh, who gives a shit about Crown Prince Orso? And then flipped on was literally Orso. Like I was like, holy shit! Like he went from, I could not care less about what he's doing, his story, anything. Like, oh, he's going to deal with the rebellion, whatever. The characters have to interact. Like, you can't just have 5 separate stories, otherwise you should just publish 5 separate books. Whatever. But when it kind of got to being like, he's like, he got Savine back, and he's like, I want to be a good king. I want to be this, and this. And then it's like, he just had a very quick, like, ramp up. And I really enjoyed this section where he's like, he went, like, a huge arc to become this great character, and then dropped right off when Savine was like, no, we're not getting married.
Yep.
Minor spoilers for the other book, because I'm going to say my piece on what happened. Like, I knew that Orso and Savine were going to be siblings, or half siblings, whatever, because the, Artie, like Savine's mom, is involved with Giselle, in book 2 and 3 of the original trilogy. So it's like, there's no way, because Glotka used to be a warrior way back in the day, and he was always working with the Inquisition in the series. Like, he's always been like, had issues walking, etc., etc. So I was like, there's no way. Like, and like they talk about it in the 3rd book. They're like, you don't have to marry someone you love as the king. You got to marry someone to, like, bring your alliance together, and then you keep someone on the side. And it's like, okay, there's no way that this isn't a thing. Anyway,
I saw that in some other reviews for this book when I was just looking at them. That some people were like, "Oh, we knew that was coming." I was like, "Well, I had no idea."
Yeah.
So for me, that was like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, it's just like it's too obvious for people who know the series.
Yeah,
Probably
no,
a great point. I'm sure you enjoyed the twist a lot more than, like, I did, but
yeah.
I think what really brought it together, like, it wasn't the twist itself.
So,
it was,
you know, the weird thing about that though is, like, I feel like, I don't know, how old is Joe Abercrombie?
Sorry,
how old is the author? He's 45.
I couldn't tell you.
You definitely, like, I definitely got Game of Thrones vibes from that, and I was like, there's no way that he isn't a huge Martin fan. Like, just
that's fair
stuff, and I was like, interesting, especially since he wrote this just last year. I was like, all right.
To be fair, Abercrombie is like the father of grimoire. Like, I don't want to say too much because I really, really, really like his writing, and I really want to share, like, some of the really dark stuff that he's done, and I won't. But I will tell you that, like, it may seem, and it probably is somewhat, like, Martin inspired, but I think there's still, like, more than enough to be like, this is Joe Abercrombie's writing, this is what he's done, rather than he's borrowed these ideas. Like, they're probably running, like, similar thought processes, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
What I was saying, though, sorry, is I still related very heavily to Orso, and I was like, his, like, heartbreak is what got me more to that situation, like, where it's like, okay, like, Savine broke his heart, and understandably ruthless about it, because that's just who Savine is. But I still felt like it's like he was making, like, he got a very sudden redemption arc. And even then, when he got it, I was just like, okay, great, Orso's gonna be cool, but he's gonna be crushed. And then he did get crushed. I knew it was coming, and I was still like, this hurt. Like, and I think that's just a sign of good writing. Excuse me. Because even though I knew what was happening, I was still invested in it. But
also, I think you saw, like, part of his true nature when, after the rebellion, like, he goes out and sees the guys hanging. And,
yeah,
like, all the dead people and things like that, and he's just like, why? Why are you doing this?
Like, he's a compassionate character. Like, he's been spoon-fed his whole life. Like, he's a crown prince. Who's surprised by that? Like, absolutely no one. But at the same time, like, it's just, how do I not feel bad for him, though? Like, and so I did. I felt really bad for him. Like, kind of same vein with Broad. Like, I liked him as a character. I really liked him. I felt bad for him because he's trying his best. But at the same time, it's like, you gotta stop fucking punching people, dude. You just gotta stop punching people.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, those are my two favorite characters of the book. And I'm kind of like, I didn't dislike any of them. Like, Savine's story was probably my least favorite. Still interesting, still enjoyed it, but like, it seemed almost unimaginable. Like, that's not true. I'm trying to find a good word for this. It's everything seemed to happen too easily for her, and I have a feeling that she's going to be hit with even more hardships in the next upcoming books. But, and it's not even like the character, it's like herself. It's just, okay, she's already rich. She's like a tyrant. She's going to continue to be a tyrant. She's slowly learning from her experience in Volbeck, but that's it. I don't know. And you said Leo was your least favorite arc?
No, it wasn't actually my least favorite. I just thought that he started poorly and he ended okay.
Yeah.
But I don't really know that I had a least favorite.
When I say least favorite...
Honestly, I think maybe Rika was my least favorite. Just because...
That's fair. That's fair.
She obviously... I think that this book is just setting her up for something down the road. Like, obviously she played a huge part, but... I didn't really feel like she herself did much beyond just having visions that led to things.
I think I agree with you.
Like, her and Leo's relationship definitely affected things.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily know that, like, we ever saw much of her actually acting on her own accord without the visions that she's seen. So, I still don't fully know what to make of her. So,
I kind of like how, like, rough around the edges she is. Like, she's intentionally rough around the edges. That's the North. Everything is rough around the edges at the North.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, she's a good embodiment of the North. But I'm kind of with you. But at the same time, if you think about it, if you could see, like, glimpses of the future, why would you act outside of those visions, right? Like, but like, at the same time, I kind of see where it's like, there wasn't really a lot to her story. Her character was great. I liked Rika as a character, but I think her story needs to be, like, expanded on more. And it might. Magic tends to be very hard to come by in this universe. And
yeah, there wasn't really a lot of it.
It's very low magic. Even in the first two books, I'm assuming from what I read and pieced together from this book, there will be a lot more in when I finish The Last Argument of Kings. Which is the third book of the original trilogy, but there's not a lot, and it's like it's for a good reason, because magic in this universe, sorry, I don't want to get like jump too far ahead. I want to like distinctly move to world building. We'll come back to magic. I think she'll have a little bit more of a comeuppance.
Okay,
but are you ready to move on to world building, or is there something else you want to say about characters?
No, that's
okay. What strategies did you see Abercrombie use in terms of world building?
What do you mean by that?
What kind of brought you into the world of Adua? Like, what kind of things, like, helped you envision the world? And I'll kind of help expand on that as you kind of bring them up.
Honestly, I didn't even remember the name Adua past, like, the
Adua is not mentioned a lot.
Yeah, I know.
But I mean, like, what made you think...
it is, but, like, it's just not even mentioned, really, so I didn't even really think about it. I think that the only time in the world building where I really got invested in it was when Sabine went to the town, whose name I'm forgetting right now, but with the Chilton Lapers and things.
Valbeck.
Yes, Valbeck.
Yeah.
I thought he did a really good job there. Being good at, the descriptive nature of the way the town was and the workers and all that. And just, like, the way that the people treated people, and that they felt like everything was the way that it was because that's just how it is, and, that's how business gets done.
Yeah.
And all that. So, but outside of that, I'll be honest, I'm probably my biggest point of contention in this entire book is that I just didn't get why they would even like say that this is supposedly pushing into like industrial revolution type era when like there's like no guns or anything. It's just like it seems kind of weird that they're like, oh, we got coal plants and we got like other inventions and things, and it's like we're moving forward and people are still fighting with freaking swords. Like, I don't really get that about his world. So I don't know if there's more backstory in his other novels or anything, but like, why are people in the people are shooting guns and stuff? Like,
I think it's a matter of like how early it is in the Industrial Revolution. Like it is. Like I think,
but, I mean,
like
it's...
if
you look at our Industrial Revolution, I mean, they had guns 300-400 years before the Industrial Revolution. Like, I just don't get it.
Fair. They might just be impractical. I don't know. I don't like having guns in my fantasy universe, so I have no qualms about that. It's just not for me at all, and that's fine. But
yeah, and that's fine too. But if you don't like, I think a lot of people don't necessarily like guns and modern stuff in their fantasy worlds, but then why bring it sort of into a more modern age if you're not going to actually bring the modern age into your book? That's really like it didn't really matter to the story in the long run.
Yeah,
story and everything else and the characters. Yeah. It doesn't really matter what age it's set in, and outside of having an industrial factory for one like chapter of the book. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't understand like why he's moving his world that direction if it doesn't actually seem like they're moving forward or progressing very much technologically. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, and they are using like war is consistent in the universe. So like I wouldn't be surprised if we did see those things coming along like in the next couple of books. But
well, I mean, like if we're going industrial era, like I mean, guns are just one small thing, and I only brought that up because of fighting. But I mean, you're talking about like trains and other stuff too.
Yeah,
like trains came along before cars and whatnot, and it's just like, you got coal and steam engines and factories and gears and all this other stuff that like takes a lot of power and electricity, and like where is all of this?
What is fueling this realistically? And it might be like just straight up labor. Like, especially with how they said they treat labored workers, like that could be a thing that he's like alluding to.
True, and I think there's references to glasses, right? Like eyewear.
Yeah, Broad wears them regularly today.
Yeah, so like that's something where I mean you really didn't have regular glass wearing people until the I guess almost 18th century.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, realistically, like you had people wearing monocles or like using glasses and things like that, but people didn't actually wear them on their face until just a couple hundred years ago. It's just like,
well, and you've had no other characters described with those glasses. It's just Broad. So I'm assuming Abercrombie's just kind of picking up his own, like, this is my Industrial Revolution and how we're going to do it in my universe. Yeah. So, but
I mean, like that's fine. I just don't think people should compare it to the Industrial Revolution if it's just like not. This, you know.
But what else do you compare it to?
Like when I was thinking about it, I'm like, this feels like a game of Civ where like somebody discovers coal like way before everybody else, and they're using coal power before they actually get musket men. Like,
yeah, so it's like it's all skewed. That's fair. That's fair. It's a good analogy. Like they just went up the wrong. Like that's probably what he did. Book it right now. Joe Abercrombie powers through to get coal power in his Civ games.
Yeah.
But, like, I kind of like it. I like kind of like you pull away that realism. Like, that's what killed me in Fable. Like, I don't know if you've ever played those games, but some of my favorites. Like, Fable Anniversary.
I think I got Fable 3 for free on Xbox, and that's the only one I've ever played.
Fable 2, I think, had guns, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. My things that I picked... I don't
mind fantasy, like, future fantasy. I really don't, personally. I'm somebody I'd be fine, and actually, I'd be fine reading like space fantasy. Like I don't care.
Yeah, that's not for me. So that's maybe where we differ a little bit here. Where it's like I felt like it was still good, like far enough back in time, but I don't want to run too long here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But some of the things I was pulling out, it's like okay, well you can clearly find like alternative names for drugs. Coke was renamed Pearl Dust. Chewing tobacco's Chaga. Or there's other like little things that Abercrombie will always like he kind of throws out like here's the name of the city like it's like why can't I remember the capital? Do you remember the capital's name? whatever. What matters is when they're arriving. It's like, oh, it's the city of white towers. It's like, here's a bunch of things that the rest of the world is doing while the story's happening. Like, you have progress being made, especially with how things are being built and upcoming, etc., etc. So it's like you have all these things kind of happening outside of the characters, whether you know about them or not. Like, you'll get a little glimpse, and I think that's a really, really good way to do world building, in my opinion. Especially from the lectures I've been doing, world building is probably like the least important to get someone involved in your book. More so important to get people involved in a series, in my opinion. But to give them little things to grasp at, it's like, oh, it is the city of white towers. Oh, but it's they're more brown gray now. Blah blah blah. Different story. But like there's like all those different options that you can kind of do with that, where it's you can have these big grand gestures happening, and they also like, which would be, in my opinion, having them moving between locations. Like, they started in the north, or that part of it was in the north, part of it was in the capital city, and in the old books, like, some of it was in the south, and they moved actually Savine's father from the capital city to the south, and that kind of gave you more of the world and what happened. But they also had a character down there, so stuff like that. But did he give you like a good idea of how the world operates outside the main story?
No, I don't think so, actually.
Fair enough. Why do you say that?
But I'm sure part of it has to do with the fact that he knows that this is like his 6th or 7th book or whatever. So
yeah,
I'm sure he's well aware that like, once again, this entire thing was totally fine as like an isolated story about characters. I don't necessarily think that, like, you could read it and not necessarily care about the rest of the world. You know that there's more going on, and that there's probably some sort of, you know, things down the line. But you wouldn't even necessarily need to know the backstory to read this. So, to me, I don't think that really mattered too much for this. I think it matters in the long run as he builds his world and his trilogy, but I think that there's definitely going to need to be something for the fans who have read all the other ones and are like, oh, this is 30 years later, what's changed? Because, once again, this is something where you're going into an industrial revolution type of thing, and the world changes very quick once that kind of stuff starts to happen. So it will be interesting. It would be interesting to me, more so as somebody who's only read this one, to get like your take on whether you feel that the world is changing, because it should change, in my opinion. If you're moving, if you're progressing and evolving the world to that extent, like, then there should be changes 30 years later from the original. So, do you see anything like that?
Of the changes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, mainly like just the obvious stuff. Like, because they didn't really give you a ton of. Actually, in the first books, because RD, like Savine's mom, lives like a very quiet life in the capital city, and they definitely give you the idea that that's impossible now. Like, completely contradicted that idea. And I think that's, like, those little things that change are big for fans too, like previous readers as well. And then, additionally, like, the Protectorate, I can't remember the name of the town that the Dogman kind of that he runs, is not part of the North, or it is part of the North in the first series, and so now it's like, if you never, like, again, I'm sure it progresses normally between the book 4, 5, 6, and these things happen, but like, you kind of just get like these little bits of progression for everybody. Like, in the midst of book 3, Giselle is not married, like the king, not married, just becomes king, etc., etc. And then this one, it's like, okay, now he's married and has a kid who's an adult and the main character. So you kind of get those like little things that move you through that, and that's kind of what got me, both in a good and bad way, where I'm like, I'm tired of hearing of all these main characters' sons and daughters, and that's probably why I enjoyed like Leo a little bit more, because he's not related to anybody. Like Ricka, like the Dogman, Giselle, Glocka, Artie.
That was actually something I wanted to ask you about, though, is because, like, Leo seems to be fairly respected regardless.
Yeah.
But he isn't necessarily noble birth or anything, so...
I think his family does come of stature. I'm not sure how far. Because, like, his mother is leading an army and was acting in a government position.
Her husband or whatever was the leader of the Union Army, right? So...
Yeah.
I get that, and I understand, but, like, it seemed weird to me that he has this, like, Leo the Lion nickname kind of thing going on before he's actually done anything.
It doesn't surprise me one bit, because it's like there is a lot of, like, in the universe, glorification of military.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to say too much about what happened, but it happens a lot, because there's still a lot of war in book 1, 2, 3. But they do glorify, like, because he gives you events that happened, and they're awful, but he gives you like glorification of it. It's like, oh, they still thought it was good. They're like, oh yeah, like we lost the city, but like you slaughtered so many men. It's like, no, it was just like awful. And he does a very good job. And I don't want to say this from a first person, but this, to my understanding, does a very good job of like portraying like how other regular people will portray war. Like, you glorify these things. Like, soldiers, bang on, great people, they love them, but they also treat their soldiers like shit. Like, Broad was mentioning that he doesn't get paid well. He didn't do well for himself. Like, when he was offered 20 marks, I think it was, he's like, that's more than
salary or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, that's crazy, especially because they mention his tattoos on his knuckles, and it's like, that means he was like one of the first ones up the ladder. It's like, that's fucking awful. But yeah, no, especially in the capital city, there's a huge amount of like glorification of military. It's nuts. It's honestly nuts. Do you have any final remarks about?
You know, normally I like to give some bad reviews, but I thought all the bad reviews were terrible, and I didn't really get it. Like, reading this book, I didn't really... Like, the weird thing is, so many people on Amazon that give bad reviews for this book, it was like a constant theme of people that are like, what is all this social justice warrior stuff from Joe Abercrombie? Like, I'm not reading more of his stuff. And then one guy's like, what is this Me Too bullshit? I'm just like, what? Like,
what are they talking about?
Any of that from this book? I didn't understand why these people were giving it like that kind of review. So
that doesn't make... No, because nothing in the book is like talking about that at all.
I know. I didn't get it at all. And that's like a lot of the negative reviews. So
you know what it probably is? You know what it probably is? It's probably because Leo is like... He clearly has like gay friends that he doesn't realize. And additionally, he might be bi. And so they're probably like...
Yeah.
I got that vibe. But they're probably all upset because like, oh, how dare they put less represented people in my book? And they huff and puff because it's not... this fucking, like, bullshit, like, cut copy garbage. Like, that makes, like, I don't want to get into the topic too much.
But it makes sense. Okay, so, like, once again, we go back to he is moving his story and his world forward into a new age.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that the characters are kind of moving forward, too.
Yeah.
And that's why I just don't get it. Like, if you don't realize that that's what he's doing, or if you just are being hateful, like, I get it, but...
Yeah.
Just...
But at the same time, like, this is not a new thing.
No,
like being gay is not new. It's just newly accepted.
Yeah, I just didn't get it.
No. Anyway, if that's your fucking bad review, like, get super bent. I don't want to hear it. If you can't handle, like, a character being bi-curious, if you can't handle a character being, like, gay, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But we won't get too heavy into that. Like, that's fucking... Ugh. I think that added a lot to the character, honestly. Like, especially because it's like, oh yeah, they're like they made Leo... Like, just... I won't get too much into it because we're running pretty high on time. He's oblivious, and he's kind of a dumbass, and the fact that he doesn't realize that his, like, two of his best friends are very clearly, like, a gay couple, like, it's like, you know what, that just adds to, like, the depth of the character, like, all of them. And it's not even like it's, like, heavy-handed, like, you're not even reading, like, I can't, I'm mad about these reviews, I can't do it. I gotta stop right now because I'm just gonna keep ripping on how shitty of a review that is.
Yeah, it wasn't just one either. It was all
Of course, bigots are always gonna find a reason to yell.
Either like social justice shit or like Me Too.
Good.
Like, what?
Good. It's a fantasy book. There should be warriors. I don't want to hear it.
I agree.
Anyway, would you recommend the book?
I actually think that I would recommend the author before the book. I think that I would rather, if I were to do it again, read his first books before I read this one.
That's fair.
Not that I think that it was fine reading this book as is, but I really felt like it wasn't necessarily like I almost felt like I could feel that it wasn't his best work.
Yeah,
which is weird. Like it felt like he has obvious direction he wants to go with his story, and that it came from somewhere else too. So I would say, like, if you want to read his stuff, to start with something else.
Yeah. Honestly, now that you mention that, like, I'd probably be inclined to agree with you. Like, his other books are fantastic. This is one of his shorter books. Like, I think his other ones are like pushing 700-ish pages. But I mean, like, his books are fun. Book 1, 2, 3 of the first Law trilogy, I've really enjoyed. I've just been really behind on my reading, so I haven't finished book 3. But book 1 and 2, I think I finished in like a couple months. And I'm a slow reader. I'm the world's slowest reader.
No, you're not.
But I think that sums up this episode of Arcanum Unbound. Unless you have something else to say.
Nah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Cool.
It was fine.
It was a good book. And I think if we will do more Abercrombie, we'll just do the first book of an earlier trilogy. I'll do a little bit extra research next time around, but I have ideas. Slight spoiler alert. I have like ideas for like guests to come on the show and for us to read books by authors and then have us kind of interview them and kind of dissect what we have to say and then kind of bounce to them and see what they were intending. So, but I mean, I've got books planned until September. This is nothing super set in stone. I have 2 authors in mind that I'd like to have on. One has already said that they're interested. The other one I have to talk to. That's fine. Anyway, April's book, though. Oh, is it not cycling? Sorry, my slideshow is not working. But April's book, though, is going to be The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, which is from his New York Times bestselling Mistborn trilogy. This will be our second Sanderson book, so that'll be interesting. We'll have something to kind of base on. But, yeah, thank you for joining us for Arcanum Unbound. You can find me at RYT Malfunction on Twitch, on Twitter, on Instagram, or if you want my nerd Instagram, it's Twitch, Brit Malfunction. You can find Dave on Twitter at LA Kings Dave. We are not sponsored by the Kings, but Bailey the Lion, hit me up. I will take a King sponsorship and I'll do some hockey shit. Anything you want to say before we finish up here, Dave?
Nope.
Excellent. Also, we're also open for ad space. That's the thing I'm doing now. We're gonna go big or we're gonna go home. That's not true. I'm not going home. I'm already home. Thank you for joining us. Episode 8, Arcanum Unbound. See y'all later.